Knon 89.3 FM in Dallas and Fort Worth, the voice of the people.
Business owners, tell KNON's listeners about your business. You can put your business or event on KNON. KNON currently has space available to run announcements for you. Tell KNON's listeners about your goods, services, nightclub, concert, or event. Help keep the voice of the people on the air while putting your information on the air. KNON's been named the #1 radio station in Dallas by both the Dallas Observer and D Magazine. Put your business with Dallas's #1 station. Call now for more information at 214-828-9500, extension 227, or extension 233. For more information, go to knon.org and click on the Run Spots on KNON page. It's a great way for your business to support community radio while letting more people know about you.
Good morning, it's the Workers' Beat. You can call us at 972-647-1893. My name is Gene Lantz, and I'm accompanied by the beautiful
Bonnie Mathias. That was so nice. Thank you.
Bonnie Mathias from CWA 6215. Bunch of stuff is going on. Bonnie, do you know what all is going on?
Oh, my gosh. There's so much.
I know that Martin Luther King events are coming up.
Yes.
And we are hoping to see a lot of union participation, a lot of working people out there. Dr. King was for the workers. He died trying to help the workers.
He did.
And
I think Monday, Mark and I talked yesterday, so I think next Monday we're going to try to get, like we did for the when we marched Labor Day, the Saturday before Labor Day when it was 109.
But what are you going to do Monday?
We're going to get together and march in the parade.
Oh no, that'll be Monday a week.
Yes, Monday week. I'm sorry. Yes,
that'll be Monday a week.
The 20th.
The 20th at the Elite News March, which is on Cleveland Street and Martin Luther King Boulevard.
Yes, and we'll know more.
What time of day is that?
I believe it starts at 10, and we'll have a meeting place for labor folks by next Saturday.
I know the teachers are going to march, so people can just look for the Alliance AFT banner.
There you go.
Alliance AFT is the teachers union here in Dallas.
And I'll bet labor will be right in there.
Also, the city of Dallas has their parade
on Saturday
at 10 o'clock in the morning on the 18th, and Jobs with Justice will have a banner there. We were going to try to get both of those together, but we didn't realize that one was on Saturday and the other one was on Monday.
Yeah.
So working people will get their choice, I guess.
Yeah.
And they also have stuff in Fort Worth, too. My local union, UAW 848, has been going to Fort Worth for the last several years. But nevertheless, you get your choice, participate in Martin Luther King events. The entire leadership of the national AFL-CIO is going to San Antonio.
Are they?
They're coming from Washington, D.C. to go to San Antonio to participate in the largest Martin Luther King event in the country, which will be in San Antonio.
Wow.
So,
and that's on Monday week, right? The 20th. Or is it on Saturday?
I think it's on Saturday.
It is on Saturday.
It's on Saturday the 18th in San Antonio. And Mark York, the head of the Dallas AFL-CIO, will be there with the other AFL-CIO leaders.
All right.
Coming up on February the 20th, there'll be a workers' rights panel at North Haven Church with York Rieger. That'll be at 7 p.m. North Haven Church is on Preston Road, I think. The next monthly meeting for Job with Justice, which is actually a meeting for all activists if they want to come, anybody that wants to come, will be February the 12th at 7 p.m. at Bonnie's Union Hall, 1408 North Washington. They're planning something that I think is going to be especially important for this year, because I think this is the year of the women. And I think in the election, I think women are going to stand up and really speak out this year. And they are planning an event for International Women's Day, which is March the 8th. International Women's Day was started, I think, in Germany back in about 1913 or something like that, way back. And it's been celebrated since then on March the 8th. And this year, the Women's Alliance for Leadership and Job with Justice are working something up, and they're going to do it at in the afternoon. That's a Saturday. In the afternoon at 1408 North Washington. Everything seems to be happening at your union hall, Bonnie.
Well, it's the union hall. We're known as the community-minded union, the community union, and we feel that the union hall needs to be used.
Right.
It's there for a purpose. It's for the people, for the community, for the workers. And the office of Dallas AFL-CIO is in our building. which that's awesome having Mark there. It really is, because we're working on our candidate screening for next week. We also have a legislative meeting coming up on the 27th. And that is also open to our partners, our coalition partners and so forth. Any activist out there that wants to come and talk about the election cycle.
Communication Workers of America does a lot of stuff. We're going to try to get your district director, Claude Cummings, on this program next week.
Oh, really? Cool.
We're working on it. We haven't cleared his schedule yet.
Great.
Yesterday was the 6th anniversary of the Great Recession. They said it was over in 2009, but that was their recession.
I was just going to ask you which one, because I thought we were still in one.
Their recession, the rich people's recession, was over in 2009.
Wow, really?
So they say.
Cool.
However, ours persists. And yesterday also they came out with unemployment numbers showing they barely hired anybody in December, and that the number of people who are participating in the workforce is reached an all-time high. So reached an all-time low, rather. Yeah. So in other words, people are not even counted as workers because they're not looking for a job, or they cannot prove that they're looking for a job. And I wonder if people have any idea where they're going to go. For last month, there was 347,000 of them dropped out of the labor force. Just
they either retired or gave up looking for a job.
It would be nice to think that they retired.
I know.
It would be nice to think that they retired.
It
would be nice to think that they went back to college, because those are the things they say. But you realize that now there are millions and millions of them, people that are no longer counted as being in the labor force. They call them discouraged workers. And we're not even talking about the ones that are working part-time involuntarily.
Right.
The ones that have to work part-time and don't want to. Mm-hmm. We're talking about the ones that just aren't counted at all, the discouraged workers. What else can they go into besides criminal activities? Where else are they going to go besides picking up a pistol and holding you up on the next time you go to the 7-Eleven or something like that? Mm-hmm. So you can expect that they're not just going to lay down and die.
No.
They're going to have to do something. And criminal activities beckon when you can't get a legitimate job. And people should keep that in mind and vote for some help. We're trying to get people to vote for, or trying to get people to extend benefits for the long-term unemployed.
Yes.
And there's a number that you can call, if I can find it, but I can't.
Oh, I don't.
I'm losing my eyesight, and
okay. Well, Gene's looking for that. I can tell you that today in labor history, in 2002. Ford Motor Company announced it would eliminate 35,000 jobs while discontinuing 4 models and closing 5 plants.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what happened in 2002.
I got all kinds of labor history stuff here.
I know.
But I'm still looking for the number on who to call about the unemployment.
Extension of unemployment. Okay.
Let's go ahead and introduce our guest.
Yeah.
Kenneth Williams gave a great talk on Wednesday night about labor and the civil rights movement. Good morning, Kenneth.
Good morning, Jane.
Can you kind of fill us in on labor and the civil rights movement?
Well, labor and the civil rights movement have a very long and strong connection, and there was no one who understood that better than Martin Luther King. And Martin Luther King's the whole campaign that he engaged in for civil rights was also deeply entwined with labor, and he just understood that those two movements were connected. And I think what he did is what I call a lesson in solidarity. And if you look at some of the things that Martin Luther King said about labor, for example, in 1965 he was speaking to the AFL-CIO, and he said the following. He said, "The labor movement was the principal force that transformed misery and despair into hope and progress. Out of its bold struggles, economic and social reform gave birth to unemployment insurance, old age pensions, government relief for the destitute, and above all, new wage levels that meant not mere survival, but a tolerable life. The captains of industry did not lead this transformation. They resisted it until they were overcome. When in the 30s, the wave of union organization crested over the nation, it carried to secure shores not only itself, but the whole society. So that's what Martin Luther King thought about labor, that this was key to taking the entire working class, the entire so-called middle class, into a better standard of living.
Okay, I found the number.
Yay!
But I can't read it.
Oh.
Does anybody got good enough eyesight to read this?
It's
866, something like that. It's tiny. I'm losing my eyesight. I'm having eye surgery on Monday.
Are you really?
Yeah, that's why I didn't come in my usual tuxedo.
Oh,
Because I was going to ride my bicycle, and I got about halfway here and remembered I had to take a bunch of eye drops. And so I took I had to run back on my bicycle to the car. You can't read it either?
I don't see it.
Oh, you can't see it? It's in that little bitty type right there.
Okay, you guys.
You can't read it either.
Okay, so when I get past my glasses, now I can see it. It's 866
Okay.
937 4359.
866-937-4359. That's the number you're supposed to call to get the Congress to extend unemployment benefits, right?
Yes.
And there's another number that we're going to put out next week about the Trans-Pacific Partnership.
Oh, yeah.
Because Bonnie's Union, the communication workers, have called for a day of action on January 22nd about that, because they are getting ready to vote on fast track. This is something you know quite a bit about, Kenneth, because we talked about this last time you were on.
Yes.
You want to explain what fast track is?
Fast track basically is a process where they would bypass the normal legislative process. Normally, when legislation comes forth, they do investigative committees. People can come to testify. People from the general public can testify. Experts. You get a chance to go through what's in the legislation. With fast track, you're going to bypass most of that and very quickly have a process that's pushed by the White House such that we'll never know what's in this agreement until it becomes the law.
Yeah, and they want to make it go through really fast, right?
Yep.
Well, and they have good reasons for that, because there's a lot of poisonous things inside of the TPP which can affect both, say, your consumer rights in terms of, do you really want to consume food that's produced by the standards of, say, some third world country? Do you really want to have your medication prices jacked up because they have some kind of international agreement that says people have to pay higher costs for their medication? And there are many things like this.
And your environmental laws. They want to just throw out the environmental laws. You know, it's like companies can do whatever they want to, both with labor laws and with environmental laws.
And with financial reform, all of these things will be under the gun if TPP pass, and they're trying to do it before people notice what's in this agreement.
So if it goes through, if they get fast track authorization, they'll probably put this through in 12 hours.
Yep.
And Congress will not be able to amend it one way or the other. They'll have like 12 hours to look at it, and then they'll have to vote it up or down one way or the other.
And people have to understand what this agreement is essentially NAFTA on steroids. So you're going to have an agreement which is going to result in hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of American jobs being shipped overseas. You're going to have all kind of consumer protections and labor protections taken away. It will be a really big change in how we live in this country, and it's not even being debated, and they don't want you to see what's in it.
Yeah. Well, if you have an opinion, give us a call at 972-647-1893. We're fortunate to have Kenneth Williams with us, a Move On activist. Aren't you a co-chairman or something of Move On?
Yes. Yeah, I'm a co-chair of the Dallas Move On.
I don't know if people know what Move On is. Do you want to tell us?
Well, Move On is simply a group of people who would like to see the public policies and the governmental policies moved in a more progressive direction, a direction that's more in support of working families, as opposed to processes that help put more wealth in the pockets of people who already have a lot of money. And that's what we're trying to do. We want a more democratic society where we really have, say, one man, one vote.
And you take on a lot of issues of interest to working families.
Exactly.
Like, for example, the Trans-Pacific Partnership or the CPP.
And also environmental issues, and of course we're supporting the increase in the minimum wage, all of these kind of things that are going to make life better for ordinary people.
I see. And there's a big Move On chapter here in Dallas, another one in Fort Worth.
Yes. Yes.
And they do a lot of stuff.
Well.
You want to tell people how to get in touch with Move On?
Yes. Move On. If you can go online and just search for the moveon.org and look for the Dallas chapter, that would probably be the best way to get in contact with us.
So it's moveon.org.
MoveOn.org.
It started primarily online, but it's become an activist group.
Yes.
Throughout the country. It's very impressive.
Yes, it is.
You spoke about Dr. King on Wednesday night. Will you be available for other people to talk about Dr. King and working people?
That's possible. That's why I'll have to just see my schedule. But yes, I would be willing to do that.
Okay, if you're interested in getting that, you can contact me through labordallas.org, or you can call right now to 972-647-1893. This finding out what Dr. King actually said about working people is kind of surprising to some people, because I think he's being put off now that he's gone and can't defend himself. They just talk about him as a dreamer. Yeah. He was the dreamer. Well, he did a lot more than dream. He got out and worked, and he spoke a number of times to working people. This is a quote, and it's my favorite quote from him. This is from his letter to the Amalgamated Laundry Workers in January of 1962. Dr. King said, "As I have said many times, and believe with all my heart, the coalition that can have the greatest impact in the struggle for human dignity here in America is that of the Negro and the forces of labor, because their fortunes are so closely intertwined." I have a number of those quotes that are on the AFL-CIO website, along with a picture of our friend Kenneth Williams, because he was giving these quotes the other day. I wonder if Kenneth, you want to look that over and see if there's any more quotes that you'd like to share.
Oh yeah, there is one I'd like to share.
Wait just a minute. They're going to make us take a break.
Okay,
we'll get back to Dr. King when we finish this break, and you can call us at 972-647-1893.
And Friday I'll get my pay.
And here we are on Saturday morning.
That's right.
972-647-1893 is the number, and Kenneth Williams is just about to share something that Dr. Martin Luther King said.
Oh, yeah. Dr. King saw very strong parallels between the labor movement and the civil rights movement. So in 1961, he said, "Negroes in the United States read the history of labor and find it mirrors their own experience. We are confronted by powerful forces telling us to rely on the goodwill and understanding of those who profit by exploiting us. They deplore our discontent. They resent our will to organize so that we may guarantee that humanity will prevail and equality will be exacted. They are shocked that action organizations, sit-ins, civil disobedience, and protests are becoming our everyday tools, just as strikes, demonstrations, and union organization became yours to ensure that bargaining power genuinely existed on both sides of the table. We want to rely upon the goodwill of those who oppose us. Indeed, we have brought forth the method of nonviolence to give an example of unilateral goodwill in an effort to evoke it in those who have not yet felt it in their hearts. But we know that if we are not simultaneously organizing our strength, we will have no means to move forward. If we do not advance, the crushing burden of centuries of neglect and economic deprivation will destroy our will, our spirits, and our hope. In this way, labor's historic tradition of moving forward to create vital people as consumers and citizens has become our own tradition, and for the same reasons."
Right. And what year was that?
1961.
Why are we still fighting for the same thing?
Well, what I think on that's a great question, Bonnie, is that the fight for working people is never going to have an ending point, because the folks who want to roll back the clock and take rights away from people, they never stop. they are working 24/7 basically to try to grab all the marbles, to take all the economic goods in society, and to grab all the power. We ordinary folks, we don't pay as much attention to this process. Let me give you a simple data point. You know, there's about 40,000 lobbyists in America who work in our political process. 40,000. That's what the Army in World War II called two divisions. So they've got 40,000 lobbyists. Almost none of them are working for ordinary people. Most of them work for corporations. They work for people who have lots of wealth. And they're working all the time. These are people who are very well trained, very well educated. They're experts in their field, and they stay up, and they're just working all the time to make sure that even more money gets in the pockets of those who have a lot of money now, or even more power. On our side, the average person, they just try to get through the day, take care of their family. Every now and then they want to just relax and have a little fun. And meanwhile, these people are just trying to take our rights away all the time.
The amazing thing is this. We go on all the time, especially on this program, about how the corporate forces, how much money they have, how many lobbyists they've hired, how many elections they're able to buy out, how they own all the radio stations and all the TV stations, all except this one, and all the newspapers, and just how terribly, terribly powerful they are. And it sometimes seems that up against such a terribly powerful force, we must not be able to do anything. It's discouraging. And then when you think it through for a minute, that with all of their wealth and all of their power and all of their control, they still have to rely on duplicity. They can't get by without lying. They have to trick us all the time. They can't just buy us out, or defeat us, or crush us, or humiliate us, or get the army on us or something, or make the police make us think what they want us to think and do what they want us to do. And all. They have to rely on trickery. So they're not.
And they're pretty damn good at it.
Well, they are.
I must say.
But they're not so powerful.
I mean, they're great at it, but like what you're saying, Gene, there are limits to what they can do. Right? They're very afraid that ordinary people will become aware of things that are happening in our society. And they're very afraid, most of all, that you will actually register to vote and that you will show up to vote. Because on election day, their money is negated on that day. I don't care how much money they have, they cannot directly buy an election.
They have to trick us.
They have to use that money to pump those commercials through to confuse you and hope that you'll vote against yourself.
Yeah, they have to trick.
They can't just negate your power to vote.
They have to trick us. That's
Yes.
what I'm saying. They're not so powerful that they can get what they want directly through their power. Without duplicity, they're nothing.
And that's, I tell people all the time, there are a lot more of us than there are of them. I mean, 40,000 lobbyists. How many billion people are in the United States now?
About 300 million,
Okay.
more than 300 million.
300 million people in the United States, and we've got 40,000 people controlling our destiny?
Yeah.
That's crap.
And raking in all the wealth and all that.
Yeah.
But they have to trick us. They can't do it honestly. They can't do it up front. They literally have to trick us.
And that's why this station is so important, because I guarantee you are not going to hear a conversation like this on any mainstream radio.
No, they won't even have Kenneth Williams within 100 miles.
Probably not.
Nice.
He's one of those rabble rousers.
And we can have you on the radio too if you'll call us at 972-647-1893. KNON really likes it when people call. So
We do too.
you have a question or
Mostly.
comment for Bonnie or Kenneth Williams? 972-647-1893. We've been talking about the relationship between the civil rights movement and the labor movement, and we're kind of falling back on Dr. King, who said many times that they belong together.
Exactly.
And that they can work together, and that they must work together.
Yeah, I have another quote here. Basically, he was making the point that these two movements have the same interests. He said this to the AFL-CIO in December of 1961. He said, "Negroes are almost entirely a working people Our needs are identical with labor's needs: decent wages, fair working conditions, livable housing, old age security, health and welfare measures, conditions in which families can grow, have education for their children, and respect in the community. That is why Negroes support labor's demands and fight laws which curb labor. That is why the labor hater and the labor baiter is virtually always a twin-headed creature, spewing anti-Negro epithets with one mouth and anti-labor propaganda from the other mouth.
One thing that I think everybody can get together on, all working people can get together on the minimum wage issue.
Yeah.
That's kind of the drawing. You know, they say, you know, which side of the line are you on, or which side are you on? And the line, oftentimes, is the minimum wage issue.
You know, last week or 2 weeks ago, we talked about, is Dallas a racist city? Mm-hmm. And racism is all kinds of bigotry, if you will, mm-hmm. Whether it be against African Americans, brown people, or poor people, which is the norm. No matter what color you are, if you're poor, you're crap. There have been so many letters in the Dallas Morning News
about racism.
Yeah. I mean,
well, I read the front page this morning. It said they're not racist.
Oh, Jesus.
The Dallas Morning News says, nope, we're not. We looked, and that's
nope, we looked in the closet. We're not. We're good.
We're good. That's what the Dallas Morning News says.
Yeah, okay.
Let's take Joshua's call on line 2. Good morning, Joshua. Thanks for calling KNON.
Good morning, Gene. Good morning, Bonnie. Hello,
Good morning.
Hello.
Hello. Yeah, I thought your discussion of education, I guess it's implicitly about education, the way that people become aware of the way that lobbyists work, the way that politics work, the way that economics works. And now that I've got a week of teaching at the elementary level under my belt.
Okay.
God bless you.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I made it this far.
Yay!
It's all right.
Yeah, so far so good. But one of the things I found interesting is that social studies, which is a subject that I think can really help with people's understanding of these processes, that in relation to other subject areas in terms of what the amount of time that students are learning, is really quite small.
They're cutting it too.
It's a small fraction. I don't know. I thought that might be something that y'all might be interested in chatting about, or maybe some other callers as well.
That's very interesting.
Thanks again for the show, and hope to see you all at the march on the MLK Day.
You betcha. Thank you.
Okay,
Thanks,
thank you, Joshua. I think Joshua makes a great point, because you see, if people don't have any context in which to understand what's happening to them, it's hard to make sense of it. Let me give you a simple reference point. The most recent, really significant crisis we had in our society was the financial collapse in 2008. So we had the private sector, the banking sector specifically, which had been deregulated for the previous 20 years or so, all of a sudden lead the whole economy and the whole society into a disaster. What does the political conversation turn to almost immediately a year later? Government's too big. The budget deficit is a big threat. The budget deficit didn't just blow up the economy in 2008. The banks had just blew up the economy, and we came away saying, boy, that private sector, boy, they're just great. Government can't do anything, even though they just bailed out the banks, would led us to a disaster.
Right.
Now, the reason why you're able to play this kind of trick on people is because they don't have context. They don't have historical reference or anything to compare what they're hearing in order to make sense out of things. If people were grounded in, say, history and understood, hey, this happened before. It was this thing called the Great Depression, 1929. The banks led the society into a financial disaster. At that point, they can put 2 to 2 together and say, oh, yeah, we've seen this movie before. Part of the problem is that the banks were deregulated. But instead, they came running around saying, oh, the budget deficit is too big. Well, hey, that's because you threw out millions of people out of work and they needed unemployment checks. It wasn't that was an effect of the problem, not the cause of the problem.
Exactly.
And so, but people need need a certain education to understand that.
They say the budget deficit is too big, but then at the same time they want to cut taxes.
And the deficit
They want to cut taxes on the rich.
You're right,
all the time.
which is totally
And then they say,
contradictory,
well,
right?
we can't have this budget deficit, and then they go right on saying we've got to cut taxes on the rich. So the simple theory ever since Reagan was elected in 1980 has been that if you give money to rich people, it'll make poor people happy. They've been saying
It's
that.
not
over and over.
working.
It isn't working, but it's fooled people. It's a
I
bit
don't
of trickery.
understand.
Well, the other thing they do in order to support that bit of trickery is, you see, people. There's not a lot of love for the rich in general. Not that I hate the rich or anything, but there's not. The average person isn't sitting there saying, "Boy, I sure hope the rich people get a tax cut." What you do is you redirect their anger somewhere else. And what you do is you redirect their anger to poor people. Mm-hmm. And so you have people walking around, you get stories in the news that there's some guy out there who's he's a what do you call it, a surfboarder, and he's getting food stamps.
Right.
And therefore, all those people on food stamps need a cut in their food stamps because, well, they're probably all surfboarders.
Yeah,
they're probably
one guy.
They're probably malingerers or shirkers in some way, and so we need to punish them as a group. That's the kind of trick you play on people. Mm-hmm. And you know, you remember Ronald Reagan, and he had his welfare queen. And welfare queen, and of course, and Bonnie mentioned race. There is implicit in these kind of stereotypes. Mm-hmm. Without you don't have to say color or race. There's implicit that these people are somehow black people or brown people who are doing these things, and there are some folks who go for that. And they're voting against their own interests because they want to punish these imaginary lazy black people who are getting these great public bounty of food stamps and welfare.
When in reality, the percentage of folks on food stamps, the majority are actually white folks. So, just so you know that.
Bobby's on line 3. Let's let him make a statement. Good morning, Bobby. Thanks for calling Knon.
You're welcome. Yes, I want to say something in regards to standing up for what's right and having God in the mix also. But I've always believed that you stand for something or you fall for anything. That's a favorite and a true statement. I recall, first of all, I'm 68 years old, turning that the 2nd of this month. But anyway, I'm from Louisiana, Alexandria, Louisiana, originally, and when I got out of school, my parents weren't able to send me to college, but right there in Alexandria, there was a 2-year college. It's Louisiana State University at Alexandria. You know, basically, it's a white college, but I decided while I was working with Head Start, I would try to put myself through and do what I could for myself. So what happened was, just before I went there were a couple of young black individuals who had just finished the high school, graduated from the high school that I graduated from, but found out that they went there, but they were antagonized and refused to stay there because I think they kind of ran them off. So what I did was right behind them, and I had already finished before they did. But what happened was I decided to go there and apply, and let you see that not all people who opposes you are the same. But to make a long story short, I wound up going there, applying. I made a grade, and this was a junior college too, by the way. And what happened was they did everything they can, especially the basically white faculty there, and especially the students. So what happened as a result of that, they didn't want me there. I knew this, but it didn't matter. I just wanted to do something for myself because my parents couldn't do it for me. And I wound up going there, and they put on racist records. They did everything to antagonize me, to get me on the run, but I wasn't going anywhere until I felt that it was time. And just before that, after that, the military called me, but I stayed there. I did good. I made good grades and what have you. But you have to be, you have to get rid of the fear. Don't let anything, because fear is a sin. The Bible tells you that. Mm-hmm. And you know, so what happened was, it was a joke to me, because I don't scare easy like I still don't. But I believe in what's fair and what's right, and so as a result, they wound up. When Uncle Sam called me, I had to leave, and I was working with Head Start at the same. That's how I was able to put myself financially with some books, because I was working with Head Start for about 2.5 years just before that.
Well, that's a good story. I'm glad to hear that you stuck it out and went on kept up your principles and your morals and went ahead. People are going to have to do that, aren't they, Kenneth Williams?
Absolutely. And one thing I would say on the issue of people working together, I think that was the most important thing that Dr. King taught us, because he had a multiracial movement that had people from all races working together to fight for civil rights.
Yeah, let's do some more of this after we take this break.
Oh, I should have been a banker, save me from these blue-collar blues.
Yeah, you should have been a banker. 972-647-1893 is the number. We interrupted Kenneth Williams right in the middle of an important thought.
Okay, yeah, I just wanted to say that in the history of the labor movement, in the early days, there was a lot of racial division. And in fact, blacks were not allowed to join the same unions that white workers were allowed to join.
In most cases.
In most cases. Mm-hmm. And what happened, a side effect of that, was that the labor movement was weak, because if white workers organized and tried to strike, they would use black workers as strike breakers.
Correct.
In order to break the strike.
Works for the bosses.
And that helped the bosses, and it hurt the workers on both sides. But after a time, black and white workers began to learn to work together. Some of the leading changes with that were with A. Philip Randolph of the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters, who worked with the AFL and the Congress of Industrial Organizations. This was the union that began to recruit blacks into an integrated union, and we had the steel workers, and blacks joined the steel workers union, and also the longshoremen and the automobile workers. Of course, Walter Reuther, who should be a much more famous figure in American history in general, was a person who fought hard to integrate the unions. And as a result, the unions in the 1930s and 40s began to win major victories in their strikes and in their negotiations.
It's because they started to get together.
Because they came together. That's the point. Before they came together, they were weakened, and a lot of things we have today. You know, you hear people, particularly in this part of the country, say they don't like unions and everything. Well, if you're enjoying your weekend now, part of the reason why you have a weekend is because of the labor movement.
Right.
If you have an 8-hour day, the reason why you go home after 8 hours is because of the labor movement.
People died for that.
Exactly.
That's right.
If you work in an environment where it's now necessary to make your workplace safe, where you're not necessarily going to go home and come back missing fingers or limbs or whatever, it's because of the labor movement. The reason why you're not working side by side with a 12-year kid who's going to work for half of what you're going to work for, again, these are changes that were made by the labor movement, and they are not guaranteed, and there are people who are working to roll all these things back right now.
Yes, they try to take it away. George is on line 4. Let's put him on. Thanks for calling Knon.
Hey, Gene, how are you? Good morning.
Okay.
Okay, what I was wanting to ask is that we have the poster child for unfair wages as Walmart.
Yes.
On Black Friday, we basically had an action at the Walmart in Box Spring.
Right.
And what I was wondering about, I know there was 75 to 100 people there, along many of the groups that I know. But I want to know, was Move On out there, and is there a way to coordinate some of these actions where we get more people and more activists on the streets?
I don't know if Move On was at that particular action. I know that Move On has supported Jobs with Justice and also supported our Walmart, and we have worked with those people in the past, and we do support them definitely.
So the Move On group is on board with the program?
We're absolutely on board with the campaign to organize workers at Walmart and at McDonald's and all that. We're very supportive of that.
Okay. George, got anything else? You still on?
Yeah, the other thing I was wondering is, we have many groups, the Texas Alliance of Retired Americans, which is very active. Occupy certainly was very active at the time. They've split off into other groups. But do you think there's a way to coordinate like-minded people to become activists?
George, I think that's a great question because I think us working together is going to be crucial for us to be successful. So I think definitely various groups and organizations that do want progressive policies for working people. We do need to support each other. We do need to work together, and we do. I think we need to do a better job of it. But I know we do because like I've been at meetings and rallies with some of these other groups that you're mentioning, and it's something we all do. We need to come together with a strategy that's going to be effective for working people because. If you compare it to the folks on the other side, let's talk about ALEC. This is the American Legislative Exchange Council. This is a group of corporate interests that push certain kind of legislation that's coming from very much from the other point of view. What these people do is they coordinate exactly what they want to do across different corporations. They come up with what they call model legislation. And if they get a bad law passed in Florida, they turn up in Arizona the next week and they try to pass that bad law also in Arizona. They're very united, very coordinated. On the progressive side, we don't have that degree of organization or unity at this point, but it's definitely something, like you say, that we need to work towards.
I think we're getting better. I think we're getting better. I do. I think we're getting better at it.
Go ahead, George.
No, I think you've answered the question. I think we have to do better and find a way to coordinate things collectively and stop going by just our own individual little things. I think there's so many things that like-minded people agree on.
Absolutely. I agree with you.
Something.
I agree with you. We have to support each other.
Yes, we do.
There's a
thank you, sir.
A body of work on this business of trying to get together. It's very elusive. It's very, very hard to achieve unity. But as Bonnie said, we're doing better now than we ever were. Yeah. And I think the way the AFL-CIO is coming in is very, very, very significant.
Yes,
now,
sir.
Doc's on line one. Good morning, Doc. Thanks for calling Knon.
Hi, Gene. This is your favorite doc, your video man. You got me confused. There are two Martin Luther King's parades in the coming week. One on Saturday and one on Monday. I can't find Mondays.
It's interesting. We were just talking about unity and the problem with trying to develop unity. Yes, there are. Of course, there's really dozens of Martin Luther King events organized by different organizations, each of them having their own particular need to do this and their own particular use for it. But here in Dallas, for some time now, we've had the City of Dallas March on the Saturday, close to the birthday, and that's at 10 o'clock in the morning at City Hall.
Absolutely.
The other one is organized by a newspaper called the Elite News, and it takes place on Cleveland Street and Martin Luther King Boulevard in South Dallas, and that'll be at 10 o'clock on Monday, the 20th.
That's a big one.
And, they have their different reasons for organizing two different things. Mm-hmm. Labor is trying to get labor to go to all of them or to go to one of them together. And I don't think it's going to happen this year because the Job with Justice got into the Dallas City parade and the teachers got into the Elite News March. So they're 2 days apart. So
we're going to try and cover both of them. Well, we're going to try and cover both of them and put them up on YouTube for you, so we can see you on YouTube.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's a great idea. At least we'll have an enduring thing.
Yep.
Thanks for having
Doc.
me.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
One of the big holdouts for the progressive movement, pretty much from 1947 until 1995, the big holdout basically was the labor movement. The AFL-CIO was very, very hard to get any of them to support the progressive movement, including the civil rights movement.
Right.
Now, Kenneth Williams brought up Walter Reuther a while ago. He was the president of the Auto Workers Union. And he was that white man that you see on the podium when Dr. King's making his I Have a Dream speech. There's only one white man up there. That's a doctor, and that was Walter Reuther from the auto workers. And he's the white man in those pictures when you see those guys walking along arm in arm going across the bridge at Selma. That was Walter Reuther. But the rest of the labor movement, for the most part, didn't participate. There were exceptions, of course. But from 1947 to 1995, the labor movement was more and more isolated. And to the point even that in, I believe it was 1987, there was a big anti-war march, and the president of the AFL-CIO told all affiliated unions that they must stay away from this anti-war march. This was during the war in Central America. So,
wow.
So there was a great deal of isolation.
How times have changed.
During the Vietnam War, where a lot of people cut their teeth on activism during the Vietnam War, the president of the AFL-CIO was solidly on the side of the pro-war forces. He was one of the last people to give it up, to give up support for the war. Even after Nixon gave up support for the war, the president of the AFL-CIO was still for it. And certain construction workers were convinced to go out and beat up anti-war protesters at one point. So it was very hard to achieve unity when the labor movement was staying out of it. Since 1995, there's been a growing movement toward the rest of the labor movement joining in with the progressive movement. And that it's not just an open arms thing. Somebody didn't just ring a bell and say, okay, now we all love each other.
Now we're happy.
We have to find ways to unite.
And we have to work at it.
That's why I brought up the minimum wage, because there's not very many issues that we all agree on. The fact is we don't all agree on, for example, Afghanistan. Right. We don't, for example, all agree on homosexual marriage. We don't even, the callers on this station will call and complain because we said something about immigration. So even the callers on this station, even though people may be calling and saying we need more unity, and they certainly are right, but at the same time, we don't agree on everything. So we have to talk. We have to have a civil discourse. We have to try to struggle to get that unity
and find common ground. I mean, that's what we have to do. We have to find that common ground, and I think we have that for the most part in the minimum wage fight.
Yeah, that's one thing I think nearly all workers agree on. What do you think, Kenneth?
I think the minimum wage is one of the great things to unite Americans, working people in general. And I think it's be a powerful thing to focus on in the 2014 election. The minimum wage is a real interesting topic because the opponents of raising the minimum wage claim that it will hurt jobs if you raise the minimum wage. But the logical corollary of that is if you let wages fall, you ought to have more jobs. Now, in 1968, if the minimum wage were what it was in 1968, it would already be more than $10 already, right? Yeah. And so we've had essentially a 30% decline in the minimum wage over those 40 years. And where are the jobs? Right. Where, they don't really have a sensible argument if you think about it. And there are other places where the minimum wage is higher, places like Australia, Canada, whatever. And we don't see the same massive unemployment that we see here, even though they have a higher minimum wage. So this is a great subject. It's long overdue, and we need to push it.
Steve Forbes, who publishes Forbes magazine and has $430 million himself, is against the minimum wage. Can you imagine?
Isn't that nice of him?
Democrats at the same time are making a midterm election year push to raise the federal minimum wage to $10.10 an hour. Senator Tom Harkin, he's pretty good. He's got his name on a lot of good stuff.
Yep.
He's pushing a bill that would do that, and President Obama has said he supports the measure. I think President Obama is going to make a State of the Union speech next week, and I think the minimum wage is going to be in there. A majority of Americans support the minimum wage increase, according to a Washington Post ABC News poll. But Republicans argue that raising the minimum wage will stifle economic growth. And here's what House Speaker John Boehner said. I don't know how many $1 million he has. But he says, quote, when you raise the price of employment, guess what happens? You get less of it. So in other words, the same argument that if the minimum wage goes up, that there'll be fewer jobs. There's no data to support that.
Right.
They've got all kinds of historical data. What happened when they did raise the minimum wage, it did not affect unemployment. This is an outright lie, and it's being repeated over and over again. Let's see what Corey has to say. He's online, too. Thanks for calling, Corey.
Hey, how's it going?
All right.
I'm kind of torn on this issue for two reasons. Okay. Number one. Okay, it was me and about 5 friends, and we all went through college and everything. And we were trying to agree to start a company or however, whatever. Okay. Me and my other buddy, we worked hard. We didn't party or whatever. We went through college. He graduated. I did for certain reasons, for family reasons. But we ended up working together anyway. I ended up working for him in his company instead of being part of my own. Now, our other buddies, they partied and everything like that, made bad decisions through school. Okay, and they were the lazy friends. You always have a group of friends. You have some that work and some that don't. Well, these guys end up didn't want to work or whatever. So they ended up having to get a minimum wage job based off of decisions that they made by going to jail and stuff like that, because they were actually unemployable because of all the things they did. Okay. Now, me and my buddy, we made some decent money or whatever, and we went on, but we had our friends complaining to us about them not being able to find jobs and that we should hire them and let them work for us, stuff like that. And we're like, okay, we know you made these bad decisions. And I've had experience, number one, is that people that do get a lot of minimum wage jobs, they have had some bad experiences because of the choices that they made. Now, I've seen...
Are you going to say it's all their fault?
To a degree, yes, because you have a certain responsibility that you have to take for yourself.
Okay.
The second part of it is just here. Now, they are talking about some legislation that I've heard in other places where they're not requiring background checks for private industry jobs. Now, I'm kind of on that thing if you're supposed to be given a second chance if you go to jail and you got yourself straight or whatever. I'm kind of on that side of the argument. But at the same time, isn't there a degree of responsibility that you are supposed to take for yourself?
Well, people, if I may respond to that. So, Corey, yeah, we of course agree that people have responsibility and people need to work hard. Now, I don't know about your friends that you're referring to, but surely you don't believe that everyone who is working for the minimum wage has a criminal history or made bad decisions. No. I mean, we've had, but let me tell you why I'm making this point. Okay. We used to, in this country, particularly in the Midwest of the United States, it was called the industrial belt. We had factories. We had factories where were producing steel. They were producing all kinds of different products, and people were getting paid a lot of money, and those jobs moved. Okay, Corey, one last question. Do you support the minimum wage, or are you against it? Or increasing the minimum wage? You support it? Right on. Well, appreciate it. We've got to go. Thanks so much for calling, Corey, and thanks to everybody for listening to the Workers Beat. We'll be back next week.
Yes, we will. Thank you.
KNON 89.3 FM in Dallas and Fort Worth, the voice of the people.
Business owners, tell KNON's listeners about your business. You can put your business or event on KNON. KNON currently has space available to run announcements for you. Tell KNON's listeners about your goods, services, nightclub, concert, or event. Help keep the voice of the people on the air while putting your information on the air. KNON's been named the #1 radio station in Dallas by both the Dallas Observer and D Magazine. Put your business with Dallas's #1 station. Call now for more information at 214-828-9500, extension 227, or extension 233. For more information, go to knon.org and click on the Run Spots on KNON page. It's a great way for your business to support community radio while letting more people know about you.